Hi, good morning. It's time for us to begin. If you would, go ahead and turn to Matthew chapter 5 and be ready. Let's be honest, we're probably just going to stay in Matthew chapter 5. I would be totally shocked if we made it to Matthew 6, but who knows? So if you would be ready to go to Matthew chapter 5, we'll start there in just a moment. Ask Bruce to lead us in prayer before we start.
Bow with me. Father, we come to you this morning with humble hearts and grateful hearts, knowing what you do for us each day and what you provide for us this day, a day that we can come and with the same minds and hearts worship you, study from your word, to learn more about your will for us and how that we can please you. Father, be with David this morning as he leads his class. Be with us as listeners. Open our hearts and our minds to those things that will profit us spiritually. Help us to put the worldly thoughts out of our mind and think about those things that are spiritual. Father, be with all our teachers this morning that as they lead the classes, teaching our young. Father, we know that they're the future of our church, your church. Pray that they will learn the lessons that they need to grow up spiritually. Continue to be with us, Father, and forgive us when we fail you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right, so we're continuing in our study about the things that we can learn about teaching others from the teachings of Christ. And we made it to the section now where we're looking at his direct lessons that he is now, so full-fledged, it's a sort of a lesson we're kind of picking up on. No, this is like flat out, he is teaching a message. And so what we're looking for in that is, what was the context? Why was he delivering this particular message? What lesson can we learn from the message itself? What was he saying to the group? What were they supposed to understand? And then going from that, looking at going, all right, if I'm then going to be a person who teaches what Jesus taught, what lessons can I learn from that particular example? And so we made it to Matthew chapter 5. And Matthew chapter 5, as far as we know, as far as the writings and stuff go, this seems to be his first public. And when I say public sermon, what I mean is, where was he preaching, or where would his messages be delivered prior to this? Synagogue. So it tends to be he was going to the synagogues, but this is where we see he stepped out of that and is now, I'm going to address the general public, and here's this message I've got. Right? And so this lesson goes through Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. We typically know this message as Sermon on the Mount. So the Sermon on the Mount, and that simply is not really hard to figure out why we call it that, simply because of the geography of what we're told about where the message is. He's got this crowd of folks who have come to hear him. And so he begins to teach this message. And we talked last week about, we may not know exactly what this group came to hear, what they might have been hoping. I'm going to guess for sure some of them were going, here's the guy who's about to tell us the plan about how he's going to lead us to overcome the Roman domination. Here's the revealing of how it works so that we can all sign up and get on board for it to go. But then also, Jacob pointed out last week too, when you look at this audience is filled with folks who have real problems, what we would say, difficult lives. And so there probably are some in that audience who are going, I've actually heard stories about some of the things you're able to do. And maybe you then can help me of my physical infirmities and those kinds of things. What's interesting is, what does he do? So he starts to deliver this message. And those first set of verses, what do we call those? The Beatitudes. And the Beatitudes, because they all start with blessed. Right? And we talked about that, where the way that we understand that word in this day and age doesn't really fit probably with the message that he was trying to convey to these folks. Because you're not happy, top of the heap of a land, if you are mourning, if you are hungering and thirsting, if you are persecuted, if you are. So we were looking, trying to go, what's maybe a better word, better phrase that we could use if I wanted to get the message across to people today? Anybody remember some of the ones we came up with? Favored by God. That's my favorite one probably. Favored by God are individuals who are, not because they're in position one, but because of what can be delivered to them in the second half of it. Is it, if I'm just a person, favored by God is a person who mourns. Okay, it's not the mourning itself that does it, it's what it hopefully then leads to, which is allowing God then to comfort you. Favored by God are individuals who hunger and thirst, but not just hunger and thirst, he qualifies it, hunger and thirst for righteousness, okay? But again, just to be hungering and thirsting for righteousness isn't going to be good enough if I don't go to the right source to find that answer. So my guess is, and again, we don't have this necessarily written there, is as he begins this message, the people are going, this isn't exactly what I came to hear. This isn't the message I hoped to hear, where he's telling me, if I'm one of the people who came waiting for him to reveal his plan to overthrow the Roman government, I'm deeply disappointed, because this isn't even about that at all. And actually, he tends to maybe be kind of tell me, you're good where you are. And if I'm a person who's looking for him to relieve me of my physical ailments, any of the things that he talks about here, he goes, it's going to come later. And so it's like, this isn't really what it is. But what we'll see is he's going to get to a point here, eventually, where he's going, I have to fix some stuff. You have been taught incorrectly. You have been led to believe some things that are not right. And so part of my job while I'm here on earth is to rectify that, is to get you straight on a few things. So we ended with the Beatitudes last week. We're now going to move on to Matthew chapter 5, starting with verse 13. In Matthew chapter 5, 13 through 16, if you're like me, if you had Christian parents who made sure that you were in Sunday services and Wednesday night services and all those things there, you've heard this one over and over and over, and you know the song that goes with at least part 14, 15, 16 there. We could do a whole sermon. I've done it multiple times. I've taught entire lessons just on those 4 verses. That's not the intent today. But what I want to do is let's look at these 4 verses and let's go, what is he actually trying to say? What's the big message that he wants us to take away from these 4 verses? Because I think sometimes we add some stuff to it that's maybe a little bit more than what the general real message is. And I'll talk about that maybe just a little bit more in just a minute. So let's look at Matthew chapter 5, start with verse 13. He says, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Okay, so he's moved on from these beatitude lessons, blessed are these and blessed are these, and it ends that whole phrase with rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. So they persecuted the prophets who were before you. And now, let me move to, and again, we talked about this a little bit last week. This is not a transcript of the message. There are probably other parts, other things that go here, but here's the synopsis, is what Matthew provides for us. Here's the overall message of what Jesus has said here. So in these 4 verses, what's he saying? Don't answer. I mean, Lawson?
So we have a responsibility to have an impact on the world for the purposes of God, by our character, by the way that we live, and the things that we do in the world. We're to bring glory to God and to leave a benefit to people in that regard.
Okay, so we have an impact. And he uses two things that are pretty clear. Okay? So he's really good at using analogies to go, I have this greater point to prove. I want you to understand, so I'm going to use things that are in your regular daily life to illustrate that point where you get it. So you have to have an impact, okay? Because we think about the two things that he uses, salt, light. Are those things that have an impact on our life? Absolutely. They are things that are hard to miss. They are things that are noticeable. So because of those, where he says, you're supposed to be like these things. First of all, you're supposed to be like salt. What specific trait does he state about salt? It has a distinct flavor, distinct taste. What do we often hear people say? But salt also has a preserving quality. Is that what he's talking about here? No. Does salt have a preserving quality? Sure does. That's not the point in verse 13. The point in verse 13 is it has a distinctive taste, because he even says what? If it's lost its flavor, not if it's lost its preserving qualities there, because that's not the message. The message here is if it has lost its distinct taste, that if it can blend in with other things and you don't notice that it's there, what's the point? It is there to stick out. It is there to actually, if it's done correctly, enhance the meal. I know when my mother started having issues with her blood pressure, suddenly salt disappeared from many of the things. And I would go home and expect the regular food that I'd grown up on all my life, and would eat some and go, what happened? And she would go, oh yeah, you may want to add some salt to that, because I can't have as much salt any longer. That's the way that if we are going to be, let's go right back to Jansen's sermon that he just got through talking about. If we're going to be the man God wants us to be, are you going to just blend in? No, you're going to stick out, and you're going to enhance what should be happening, the relationships that we're supposed to have, that husbands are supposed to have with their wives, that fathers are supposed to have with their children. And if they've lost that God-given, God-required trait, what good are they? And Jesus uses lots of dramatic stuff, because he doesn't just say, if your salt's no good, just chunk it. What does he say? They just walk on it all over. Yeah, walk all over it. This stuff is absolutely worthless. And it goes with, then so he moves from this quality of salt, and then again he goes to something that is very distinctive, and he goes to, so yes, you're supposed to be the salt of the earth, but you're also supposed to be the light of the world. What quality of light does he point out? Go more. Say what? It's visibility. Does he talk about light's ability to, so we have lights on here. What's the primary purpose of these lights here? So that we can see. It's not so that you look at the light. If you find these lights attractive, you are easily pleased. because they're not. Okay? So it isn't about going, yes, light is going to brighten up a space that it's in. But when he's talking about this light here, and he even uses an example, okay? Where is this light? He says next that, so you are the light of the world. What's the next thing that he says? A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Is that city set on a hill helping you to illuminate the space you're in? I can now read my book because of the city on the hill that's lit up. No. What does the light on the city of the hill do for it? So you can see it, so that it sticks out, so that it is shining there. Yes, sir? Yes. Good. It guides people. So if you think about that day and age, and some of us may look at that, if you've been traveling, and you're traveling on roads that aren't necessarily all that well lit, but then you get in the vicinity of a city and you know that's where you're headed, you can start to tell and go, oh, wait, we must be getting close because I can see that group of lights that are up there that are different than out here in the country or out here in these more deserted roads. So it sticks out so that you can see it. Now, let's go on though. Okay, so for 14, in 15 though, he does point out something though. Again, here's where that song comes in. What does he say there in verse 15 about if you get a light, what do we do with it? We send it on a lampstand, okay? And you don't, what? You don't put it under a basket or a bushel or again, whatever phrase they've got there. So I don't go out of my way to purchase a light and then just cover it up. Now it does say in that particular thing though, it gives light to the room. So it is going to reflect some light that's going to brighten things there. But then he really hammers the point home in verse 16, where he says, what? So let your light shine. Why? So people may see your good works. So what's this light about? If I'm the light of the world, it is about illuminating the things that I do. It is about sticking out. It is about being visible with a purpose. Not just, hey, look, I'm wearing bright colors and I'm doing all these things here so you can look at me. No, it says specifically though, what is the purpose of the light that I shine? Glorify God. That's what should be happening. Again, I go back to Jansen's lesson. If we're fulfilling our God-given roles, we are going to stick out. We are going to be visible. And if we're doing it correctly, we're not doing it so people can go, wow, look at you, you're super cool. It's about you're different. You stick out. Hopefully, so that people will go, can I talk to you about that distinctive quality that you have that makes you different from people that I see? And you can then explain and go, yes, because God guides my life. He directs my steps so that the world may tell me this is okay, but I can't do that because God expects this. And the world is acting in this particular way, but I can't do that because God says this. And then it all then goes back to if we have taught the people in our lives correctly, use the advantage of the opportunities that we've been given to point them to the true source. Because really this light that we're shining, is that us? I always think of this one, in this one, we're more like the moon in this particular case. We only have the ability to shine. Why? Because the light comes from the sun, which is God, and his Son is a light which then allows me to be lit up, which then allows me to shine. And if I'm doing it correctly, shine in a way that others can see. I drive in the dark a lot in the mornings. Depending on what time of year it is, I might be driving as the sun is coming up. And one of the things that frustrates me the most are people who do not turn on their lights. And when you talk to them about it, they go, well, I can see. That's not the point of your lights at that time of day. The point of your lights at that time of day are to be seen. I need you to turn your lights on so I can see you, so you stick out, so I don't hit you, and we don't die. And so it's getting to understand going, the purpose of the shining of the light isn't just to brighten our space, although that's kind of a secondary type. Again, I can't just light something there and it doesn't have some illuminating effect of the space around it. Maybe you see the towers, okay? And they've got a little red blinking thing on the top of really, really tall towers. Why? So aircraft don't run into them. Okay? It's not to light that space up so that people can then see from it. It's so it sticks out. So the purpose of me being a light is to attract folks to see something that makes me stick out. And then using that opportunity to go, yeah, you know why that is? And I then utilize that opportunity to talk about God and how God gives me the opportunity and the responsibility to shine in his way. Okay. Anything else on that one? Yeah, go to Joe. Okay. Yeah. Good. Yeah, because sometimes lights are to avoid a hazard. Yeah. What also happens a lot of times if people have their bright lights on and they're coming at you. Okay. So also it's about managing the light properly. Don't just go randomly shining the light there, but it's about, and I think more that, kind of we go with the salt, right? If you're cooking something and you just dump all the salt you got into it, that taste is sure going to stand out. If you've ever had somebody who mixed up the sugar and the salt in something that they made, and you go, whoa, that salt was distinct. Did that salt do anything to draw me to it? No, it ruined what it had. And so it's about appropriateness as well, managing that correctly, which again goes to verse 16. Shine it in a particular way. It doesn't just go, pick whatever works for you. My entire purpose for shining my light is so people can see the works that I do in hopes that God receives the glory. That's what it's all about. That's why anything about me should be distinct. This isn't about me. It's about God and about opportunities to draw people to him. Okay. Anything else on that one? Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Right.
The mindset, the idea is, now I'm out of the world, I have to deal with that wickedness and that filth, and I'm just saved at home with my family. Jesus says, no, you need to be out there because it's unsafe.
Yeah.
You're doing this life.
Yeah. How many times you hear people, they'll talk about whether or not they want to have kids. They want to bring kids up in a world like this. And I go, well, if you stop, what hope is there in the world? And I'm not going to encourage you to just randomly have children. So we can, there are religious groups who have that mindset, which is we will proliferate our group by simply having more folks in there. But it's, don't give up on what we have the ability to do to help the world be better than it is by, in the right way, getting in the mix. You got to go to, and I like what you said there, which is going, these are people who wanted to be poured into, and he's going, I'm going to need you to pour out. And he's going to say multiple things throughout this relatively small sermon to go, you have an idea about how things work, you are totally wrong. And he'll go on with more. Anything else about that one? All right, let's jump on. Go past 16 now. Verse 17 says, do not think that I have come to abolish the law of the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, unless heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Okay. What's his point in that section? And again, that's why I think there's probably maybe some missing things there, because we have these really odd transitions. So he's talked about our particularness in the world, how we stick out. And then he moves on and goes, about the law. Let's talk about that for a minute. So what's his point? Practice what you preach, possibly, but what specifically is his message right here in this little section? Yeah, I came to fulfill the law. I did not come to get rid of it. Why is this going to be important? I don't know that it's with what he's, again, we don't know exactly where this is, but he's still in the really early stages of his ministry, his earthly ministry. This is going to become huge later. Why? What's his criticism? That ultimately is going to lead to his death. Yeah. Good, yeah, and you hit on the big one there. Yeah, they're going to accuse him of not keeping the law. One of the big charges that they have against him is, wait a minute, man, this isn't how this works. You're messing this up, whether it comes to your people don't wash their hands right, y'all don't fast right, you don't, his biggest criticism is healing on the Sabbath. And they're going, you are messing the law up. And he states here from the beginning, no, that's not my purpose. My purpose is actually not to void out the law. My purpose is to what? Fulfill it. I've got to fulfill it. And look how many times that he says, this is being done to fulfill all righteousness, fulfill the law, whatever phrase he uses at the time, to go, no, I need to do these things. This has to happen because in order for me to be who I'm supposed to be, do what I've been sent to the world to do, I have to fulfill these. And he gets really, really specific. I mean, he gets in the weeds with this one. Because how much of the law is he here to change? None of it. And he uses this not one iota, not one dot. Again, if we kind of understand how languages are, there's those little flourishy or little additional things we put, like the little thing that crosses the T, the little dot that goes on the I. It's the little things that make letters kind of different, especially if you use a serif type of font, where it has like, so a T isn't just a T, it has the little droopy sides. It's up there on that stuff. So it's like, I'm not going to mess with one teeny tiny bit of it. In fact, it all has to be done, or I'm not who I'm supposed to be if I don't do that. And so he goes along and he talks about the importance of the law and its fulfillment. And then he drops a bomb. Because I imagine these folks that are sitting here going, yes, 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 I'm good with that. And then he says the part at the end, which was what? What was that, Amy? Yeah, have more righteousness than the scribes and the Pharisees. And you can imagine that audience going, what do you say? And one of those things where you turn to your neighbor real quick and go, did you hear what I just heard? Did he say? Because in that day and age, if I want to be the epitome of righteousness, I want to be the holy of the holiest, I want to ascend to the top. In the Jewish world, where am I going? I got to look at the Pharisees. I've got to look at the scribes, the ones who know the law the best. These are the folks who are guiding us here. These are the religious role models that we're supposed to follow, supposed to pattern our lives of. They've been teaching us our entire lives about who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to be it. And he goes, if you don't do better than that, there's no hope for you. And you go, again, he has thrown their world into disarray by going, well then, what is? What do I look to? Which actually then goes right back to what he said before. Who's the salt? Who's the light? You are. And when you are the salt, and when you are the light, your righteousness has to exceed what these scribes and these Pharisees are doing. Or you're wasting your time. You're not doing it correctly. Yeah, then we're going to jump in because he ain't done. He's just begun the pot stirring here. So he throws this thing here, which is going to transition his message, and goes, your righteousness needs to exceed what these folks are doing. And then I love it. It's almost like he goes, and if you're not clear on what I mean, let me throw a few examples your way, which is what he goes to next. So anybody, anything on those before we jump into those specifics? Yes, Steve? Yeah, and even look at verse 18. And I don't know how many of them caught it when he said it, but he points to the fact that it is going to end. In verse 18 he says, for truly I say unto you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished. So he's hinting right there going, it is going to end. This law will eventually come to an end. But we've got to fulfill everything about it first. And one of the things that I need you to do to get on board before that is I need you to step up your righteousness game. I need you to be on board with the status quo is not even close to good enough. So let's go on to, and he points out, he goes, all right, so here's what you're taught. Here's the right way to apply it. Here's what you're taught. Here's the right way to think about it. And he starts off with verse 21. For you have heard that it was said of those to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. Accurate statement? Yeah, that is what they were told. He goes on though, and he says, but I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to the judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. Whoever says you fool will be liable to the hell of fire. Then he goes on and says, so if you are offering your gifts at the altar and then remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you're going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out until you pay the last penny. Okay, there'll be more, but let's look at this one. Okay, so he says, here's this law about murder. Okay. He accurately states what the law says about murder. But he goes further, saying what? Don't be angry with your brother. How do those relate to one another? Yeah. Yeah. Or all kinds of things. Yeah. And what he says, so he's doing this thing of going, we focus so much on the thou shalt not kill thing. And we feel like because I haven't killed, I can put a big check mark by, got that one. Again, going back to your righteousness needs to exceed what the scribes and the Pharisees are doing. So it can't be about just checking off that mark going, boom, thou shalt not kill, got it. What he's saying is your attitude needs to be right in the first place. And if your attitude is right in the first place, murdering is not an option. It doesn't even come up. How willing am I supposed to be to work things out? Pretty willing. Yeah. Make these efforts. He's going to go on further in some of these things where be okay with getting the short end of the stick on some stuff. Be okay with not necessarily justice happening on this side of eternity. Let some stuff go. Prioritize things correctly. But his emphasis in this first teaching is get your relationship right with your fellow man, and we don't have to worry about the law that tells you not to kill. Okay. Anything else on that one? Okay, he goes next, right? In the next one he says, so starting verse 27, he says, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away, for it's better for you to lose one of your members, that your whole body be thrown into hell, than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away, for it's better that you lose one of your members than your whole body go into hell. Okay? So he says, here's this first one. We'll check off the first one. That, yep, murder's wrong and you shouldn't do it. But the basis of the problem is your feeling towards your brother in your heart. This one. And they go, again, I can check off on the mark and go, yep, haven't committed adultery. Cool. But what's the point? Again, it's about looking at others in the right way. God has established a relationship and for how that is supposed to work. And he establishes these things that you're able to do within that relationship that are not okay outside. And so the point being, if I get it right in the first place, where my mind is correct about what I should and shouldn't do, where I should and shouldn't go, specifically where my mind should and shouldn't travel. If I can control that, I don't have to worry about that end result. You know, there's a phrase that we hear, well, maybe I heard it, I don't know how many of y'all, but nip it in the bud. Nip it in the bud, which is stop it before it starts. And he even goes further then and says, how can I stop these things from happening? He gets pretty graphic. This is where you talk. Huh? Cut your arm off. Pluck your eye out. If you can't control your actions, remove the body part that is going to potentially lead to a problem. Okay, is he physically talking about removing those body parts? No. So, right? Yeah, does he literally want us to pluck our eyes out? Good, there we go. Change your heart. That's what he's talking about. That's the point where the problem is. I was listening to a podcast recently, and a preacher said that a member had come to him and said he was struggling with sin. There was a particular sin that he was struggling with, and he's tried really, really hard to stop, but he kept falling into it. And so finally, the preacher said, tell me what's going on when that happens. If you're having an issue with lust, what are you looking at? If you're having a problem with envy, what are you focusing on? If you're having a problem with gossip, who are you talking to? And maybe fix those things. If I have an issue that I seem to gossip every time I'm around certain people, maybe I shouldn't be around those folks. Maybe I need to limit how those conversations go. If you're having an issue with lust, maybe you need to not watch certain programs, not look at certain things online. We all know about Instagram issues that people have, and envy, and because there's the perfect world that people present. And there are people that look and go, why can't I have a house like that, or a car like that, or a wife like that, or a husband like that, or a family like that, or a whatever. And again, you're looking at a very photoshopped version of someone's life. And if that's causing you to be discontent with your life, maybe Instagram should be deleted from your life. And you'll be amazed the lightness. Years ago, I got rid of social media. It's amazing how many things you just don't have in your life anymore because so many people bring it to you on those types of what can be very, very, very toxic applications. And so you may think that if I keep struggling with this issue is get rid of the thing that keeps me going there. All right, so real quickly before we end, and I didn't do this last week because last week got away from me, but let's look at, in your songbook, number 180. Because I wanted to make a point of a song every time about what it is we're supposed to be doing. And again, last week got away from me, but song number 180 in the Maroon Songbook says, wonderful story of love. Tell it to me again. Wonderful story of love, wake the immortal strain. Angels with rapture announce it. Shepherds with wonder receive it. Sinner, oh, won't you believe it? Wonderful story of love. And wonderful story of love, though you are far away, wonderful story of love, still he doth call today. Calling from Calvary's mountain, down from the crystal bright fountain, e'en from the dawn of creation, wonderful story of love. And wonderful story of love, Jesus provides a rest. Wonderful story of love, for all the pure and blessed rest in the mansions above us with those who've gone on before us and singing that rapturous chorus, wonderful story of love. Is that a story we believe truly to be a wonderful story of love? And how often are we sharing that with others? We'll continue on with the Sermon on the Mount next week. Thank you.